Hello and welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten. With me today is Andrew Dukowitz of Zone Coverage. Andrew, how you doing?
Good, man. A little sleepy. I had gotten out of the being at the Target Center for 4 days out of 7 mode, but now we're back in it. Draft's over.
Yeah, draft is finally over. You and I were both at the Wolves practice facility much of the last 2 days. Yourself more than me. I had good timing yesterday of parachuting in for Tim and then pretty much leaving right thereafter. But we were both there all that first day waiting for the Wolves to take someone, and they did. See if I can pronounce his name right. With the 17th pick, the Wolves select Joan Beringer, French kid out of France, but was playing
by
in
way of
Slovenia.
Slovenia,
Serbia,
not Serbia. Slovenia. You're right.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the two kids, and then yesterday they drafted Rocco Zikarsky, an Australian kid. Two relatively similar guys in the sense of they're both big players that have played very little professional basketball. Johan especially, he's only been playing only a few years of basketball at all. Was playing soccer before that, and Rocco is a swimmer. Him and his family are swimmers. So an interesting pair of picks, but we'll kind of focus on Johan more because he'll get the actual full-on roster spot. Gets paid $4.2 million next year, which I was kind of thinking about when potentially they were going to trade out of that pick. I thought one positive of that is that he gets paid about $3 million more, or $2.5 million more than the minimum. But from talking to Tim and Matt Lloyd, they really seem like they were very happy to get this guy. And obviously, there's always a little bit of like, what else are they going to say? Nah, we hate this kid. Of course not. But I think they probably had like Cooper Flag at the top of their board, like all the other teams or whatever. But I think they like this kid a lot. And he's French and he's similar to Rudy, but he's also different from Rudy in a lot of ways. So, Andrew, what are your thoughts about the Beringer pick?
Yeah, I think the pick made a lot of sense for them. I know there's a part of the Wolves community that's pretty upset that they didn't pick like a ready now guy that could get minutes, but if this, I'll phrase it this way, like all we can do is believe people at their word. And right now what we're hearing from the Wolves is that they want to retain their 3 free agents, or as many of those as possible, and they're probably not going to make a big swing trade, and they're going to run it back and hope that, Rob, Ant, Jaden, TJ, Jalen all take another step, while Mike, Rudy stay the same, hopefully, and Julius and Dante are just more comfortable in the offense. And honestly, like, I kind of look at it as they're a back-to-back Western Conference Finals team. They weren't that far off, and if you're consistently giving yourself a chance every year at being that type of team, eventually luck is going to go your way. I mean, right now they're probably not like the Oklahoma City roster that just has depth among talent among depth, but they, Jalen Williams rolls his ankle and the Wolves are probably in the championship playing against Indiana. Tyrese, snaps his Achilles and the Wolves might be the champions right now. Like, that's kind of the margin of error the Wolves are dealing with. So when you're now over to the Beringer pick, I think it just makes sense for a team that feels they're not that far away. Eventually, Rudy is going to be either traded or move on. I kind of would assume that's probably a year or two away, especially just with how well thought of he is in the organization. And Beringer, Matt said it. Matt Lloyd said it last night, 2 nights ago. The GM of the Wolves. He's a ball of clay, and when you're watching film on him, that's kind of the impression I got. I'll be honest. Watching Slovenian league Euro play, there's not a ton you can glean from it. Like, anyone that's 7'2" and athletic is gonna pop and look great. But like the things I noticed is like he stands in the right place. Like on defense, he just kind of naturally stands where he's supposed to, which that's not nothing. Like for a guy that hasn't played basketball for very long, to just know where to stand is important. He has like really good instincts for like jumping and blocking shots. He has really good instincts for catching the ball at like a high point with rebounds. Like those are things that like, all right, there's something there. You know, Matt Lloyd said that he might have like a little 15, 17 foot gain to him. I synergied it and looked at I think he made 3 mid-range jumpers last year, and like his jump shot doesn't look terrible. Release points high, feet look fine. Like
the results are pretty rough.
Yeah, like he's not like making them. He's shooting sub 60% from the free throw line. But when you're looking at an 18-year-old kid that's played basketball for 3.5 years, the raw stuff is there. Like instincts, footwork, knowing where to go. And, you know, you throw them in the Wolves system where they have produced Naz Reid. They have produced, I mean, Leonard Miller has varying degrees of, you know, people who think he's the next KG and people kind of like me who think he's probably just a good dude at the end of a bench. But Luka Garza is a G League MVP, and I don't think anyone really thought of that when he got cut by Detroit. Like this is a franchise that can develop players. So give them an 18-year-old kid, have them work with, you know, the G League staff and the end of the bench Wolves staff and see what he can do. The other guy, Rocco, kind of the exact same. I think he's like exceptionally raw. I didn't watch a ton of film on him, but just eye test, he's played under 300 minutes of professional basketball over 2 years. His rebound rate is pretty tough for a 7'3" big guy. He draft guides had him as potential of a shooter, so I looked up his shooting stats in Australia. He was 1 for 5 from 3 this year. That is the only 3-point attempts he's taken his whole career, and he's barely 60% from the free throw line. I think Tim said it best last night when we asked him about it, and he's like, yeah, you know, he has a puncher's chance. I don't think they're expecting him to be anything in the next 3 or 4 years, but, you know, could he be a Jesse Edwards on a team? Just like a good dude that works hard and is 26, 27 years old sitting at the end of a bench? Sure. So I didn't hate the draft. I thought they addressed future needs for when Rudy is gone. You roll the dice on 2 guys and you hope one of them hit.
Yeah, and going back to Joan, I think I don't know if they were like looking at center position specifically. I just think they were trying to take like the best potential player, potential value there, and if it ended up being a center, that's great too. I think Matt Lloyd said that it's like it happened to work out that we got a positional fit as well as a value fit there. I think obviously they draft a 7-foot French kid that's good on defense. Like the comparisons to Rudy are going to be natural, but I do think the type of defender that Joan is, watching, like you said, you take the Slovenian clips with a grain of salt, but the way he plays defense is different from the Rudy, and specifically with his speed. He's a very quick defender. There's a bunch of clips where he would hit one clip like where he fell over and like someone put a post move on him and he fell over and was able to get up, recover, and block the shot. And as well as like on the perimeter, I think he is a quicker defender, where Rudy's always been an underrated like perimeter defender, but still has slower foot speed compared to like a forward or a wing or whatever. But I think Joan has more switchability. They talked about that. More foot speed. He had one play where he took the ball off the dribble and drove to the lane. Like that's obviously not something Rudy does. So I do think he's different enough. And just to me, you kind of touched on it. The general idea of taking a project to me more makes sense. They don't. And just going by the assumption that until something changes, my assumption is Julius and Naz will be back and Na will not. So just going with that assumption. And even if that assumption is wrong, I still think like those salary slots, those lineup slots will be, if it's not Julius on this team, it will be someone else in that salary slot. So either way, there's not rotation spots on this team. So you have they played 8 guys last year. Obviously, we're counting on Nikhil leaving, so we're down to 7. But Rob's gonna play.
Yep.
At the very least, they're gonna see what they got with him. So that's 8. Shannon's gonna play a lot.
Yeah.
At least compared to last year, a lot. So that's 9. And then you have Jalen Clark, who's going to play either when someone's hurt or maybe spot minutes when someone's not hurt. So that's 9.
Yep.
So, and that's not even to mention, I don't think they can go into this next season without another point guard, even if it's just like a Chris Paul minimum type or like Alonzo. I don't know. I think they need to add a point guard. So that's 10.
I agree.
And so
I think
taking like a Shannon type or that like age curve type, that is not what this team needs. I think long-term assets is what they should have been looking for, and it seems like what they were looking for.
And long-term big assets, I think, were important. You look at Luka Garza. Like, I know people love him. There's a lot of Luka Garza truthers out there. Frank Garza, I genuinely enjoyed covering your kid. He's a delightful human being. But he's probably not a rotation NBA player. Like, he's 26, 27 years old now. Like, he is what he is. He's a really good dude. He has a really good work ethic. I think he's important for a bench unit, but they know what he is. Leonard Miller, I'm kind of off the Leonard Miller is going to be something great bandwagon. I think if he had shown something last year, he would have gotten minutes, and I just don't know what his role on a good team is. Like, defensively, when he did get minutes, it was tough. So it makes sense. Draft 2 kids to play behind Rudy and Naz. And again, if one of them works out, if one of them at age 23 is getting 15 minutes, you've won the draft, because most 19th overall picks, most non-lottery picks, even most lottery picks don't play rotational minutes 4 years after they're drafted. So I liked it. To your point guard point, I do completely agree with you. I'm getting the vibe that Summer League is going to be... I don't think the Wolves are going to do a lot before Summer League. I'm really getting the vibe that it's going to be Naz and Julius come back, whether that's on restructures or taking their player options. I think Nikhil is a wild card. I would assume he's gone just by all the reporting that he's like being targeted. But also no one has money. So if it's up to Nikhil, if you could get a $12 million mid-level exception and go play for the Clippers, or you could take $7 million for 1 year and play with the Wolves, and then reset for next offseason where everyone has money. I almost wonder if he just stays for 1 more year to take advantage of next year. But no one, I don't know that for sure. Brooklyn could offer him a 3-year, $60 million deal, and then it's a no-brainer. He's gone. The point guard, though, like, I think it's going to depend on Summer League. I think if Rob comes out in Summer League, his jump shot looks consistent, he's not turning the ball over at an alarming rate, I think they maybe go that minimum route where it's like Tyus, Chris Paul, someone to just, right the ship if there's an injury. And if Rob's a disaster at Summer League, then I think it is like you're going for Lonzo, you're going for Kobe White, you're kicking the tires on De'Aaron Fox, you're really looking at it. But I wouldn't be surprised if the first week and a half of free agency is just nothing for the Wolves.
Yeah, the problem is even if, because they're not going to go into the second apron to keep Nikhil. They've they've telegraphed that. And so it's tough, especially if Julius is going to opt in, because like you said, if it makes sense for Nikhil to take a 1-year deal and reset, it certainly makes a whole hell of a lot of sense for Julius Randle to opt into his close to $31 million. And if that happens and Naz declines, they just don't have second apron cap room to keep them both.
Yep.
If they both accept or they both opt in, and the only reason Naz would do that is if the Wolves gave him an extension on top of his player option, which might make sense if his market is fully bottomed out. I still believe Naz could get better than opting in and extending. But leave that aside. If they both opt in, then the Wolves have eight and change under the second apron, and then you're talking about giving if they can give Nikhil $8 million.
Yeah.
Then that's a possibility, but
I do think
like
with
you
the
said,
Nas and Julius part of it though, like it I know it's like cliche that, you know, like Tim's like, oh, they like being here and they want to be here. Like, of course he's going to say that. Like, he's a GM. No one's going to be like, yeah, Nikhil effing hates this place. He wants to leave on the first flight out. Like, no one's going to say that. But like, Nas legitimately lives here year round. Like, he has lived in Minneapolis for the past, 5 years year round. Like, he enjoys the city. He enjoys the people. Julius is like, I think right now he's in like Italy, but like him and his family are going to live here this off season. He's doing basketball camps in like July and August here in the Twin Cities. Like, and Nikhil, like, same thing. Like, his significant other and his kid, and they like living here. They like their neighbors. Like, it sounds like he enjoys the Minnesota life. And like, I think when you're looking at like Nas Reed, if they're like, hey, Nas, we want you to opt in at 16 or 15.8 or whatever it is, and then we're going to give you a 3-year $80 million on top of that. Maybe just knowing that he's going to be taken care of in the long run. He doesn't have to buy a new house. He doesn't have to move. He doesn't have to deal with new teammates. Like, maybe that's enough for him. And same with Julius. Maybe it is like, you know, hey, opt in this year and we'll give you 320 or 375 on top of it. Maybe that's just all right. I'll have security. Nikhil's the true wild card because you could tell me he signs for the veteran minimum and he's playing in San Antonio, or you could tell me that he gets a 3-year $58 million contract. I would believe both of them. I have no clue what his value is. Like, no one has money. He's going to have to arrange a sign and trade if he wants to go anywhere other than Brooklyn or a mid-level exception. Like, I have no clue, which is crazy because normally it's like you look at a guy like Nikhil and it's like, that's a $15 million a year player. Like, that's a top 8 guy on a playoff team anywhere he goes.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting summer. Like you said, the Nas and Julius part of it will start soon. I don't remember. I think tomorrow is their, or did it already start? Their opt in, opt out deadlines and decision. That's gonna all be wrapped up before the 1st of July, at least in terms of whether they accept or decline.
Mm-hmm.
And the Wolves have like a few days here to negotiate an extension. I don't remember if Randall is extension eligible, but Nas certainly is. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch before Summer League. But like you said, if there is a big move this summer, or even like a medium-sized point guard type move, that'll happen probably, like you said, kind of probably later in the summer. I don't know how much you can for Rob, how much you can like how much you can tell about Rob for Summer League, but they'll have to figure it out because to me right now, going into next season with Mike and Rob as your only 2-point guards, is a bit tough. But
it's risky.
Going back to the Beringer pick, one thing that Matt Lloyd, said was they have like this stable of young guys and kind of one for each position. I think see if I can remember, I think he said Rob, Jalen Clark, Shannon, Leonard Miller, and now Beringer, which I found interesting because that just completely ignores Josh Minot.
Yeah.
He circled back. He listed out young players again later and made sure to include Josh Minot, but in my mind, that was him specifically trying to get Josh Minot's name out there. I don't know. I maybe I'm reading into it too much, but I think we can all kind of see that maybe Josh Minot isn't necessarily in their long-term plans, although if they take his team option this year, it's at the minimum, so the finances are fine in terms of that. But I do think that this stable of young guys that they have built makes it feel better that if they lose Nikhil, even if obviously Nikhil's a better player than Shannon. That is a loss.
Mm-hmm.
But the young guys they have, I do think is an asset to them, even if they are without picks, because you look at other teams like Denver didn't have a single pick in the draft. Following some of their guys, they don't really expect that they're going to make any huge moves, and they're just going to run it back next year. And I get that they went to 7 with OKC. If I'm and the Wolves kind of fall into this blanket too if they run it back. I don't see how Denver's roster is going to be able to beat that OKC team. Seems like they need a big move and aren't going to make it. And so, at least if the Wolves are running back a team that was inferior to OKC, you have these young guys that you can either build into rotation pieces or can build into trade assets. And I think Beringer starts with that if they are going to move away from Rudy. I just think his offensive capabilities, while I don't think the 3-point shot's ever going to come.
No.
And the question is, like, can you, something that, like, I think a lot of us would want from Rudy is more of like a 15-footer jump shot or a push shot or a jump hook.
Anything.
Can you develop that? I think is to be seen, which you would say about pretty much every 18-year-old big kid that you draft. But the defensive versatility is going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to set him apart and make him more flexibility. If you could get either of those two things from Rudy, I think like just even a sniff of offensive game or a little bit more flexibility defensively, I think you'd feel more comfortable with him. And that's probably what you're going to try to get out of Beringer.
Well, and you got, again, he's 18. That to me is the biggest thing with it is a lot of, when you're taking someone in the lottery that's like 19, they're coming in and they're playing 35 minutes. They're not working with the scout team. They're not doing as much like training with the development staff because like they need treatment. When you're playing a lot of basketball, you need your knees iced and you need like weight room stuff. Beringer's advantage is going to be he's young, and instead of playing those big minutes, he's going to be able to work with the scout team. He's going to be able to work with, I think Corliss Williamson got hired somewhere, so I don't know who their big coach is going to be this year, but like they're going to be able to work with the coaching staff to develop those push shots. I mean, the reason Rudy doesn't have a push shot or like a mid-range jumper isn't because like Rudy's just like lazy and doesn't work on it. It's because that guy puts so much time into making sure his body's right that he can play 30 minutes a year. Honestly, he's played year round in either FIBA, EuroLeague, or World Cup or the Olympics for like 12 seasons. I mean, that guy hasn't had time to develop because he's constantly playing basketball and constantly rehabbing. I think Beringer is going to have a real good shot at it. And we're probably not going to learn a ton about him in Summer League. My guess is he'll play minutes, but he's not probably going to be the primary, like figuring out if Rob cannot turn the ball over 7 times is probably like their primary objective. But like, next off season, during the season, seeing him do workouts, stuff like that, I think will be really interesting to see where he develops. I do agree with you too on having the like young 5 kind of sitting behind the starters and the top 8. Like if you're building a team on 2K, that's kind of how you build it, right? You have your starting 5, then you usually have like 5 veteran guys or guys that you play on 2K or sub in like hockey style. And then you have like your stashes that you just pump a bunch of VC and stuff into so they get better on the bottom line. And like, I kind of like it. I kind of like the Wolves' idea of that, of having that young depth at every position. And again, are all of them going to work out? Like 3 years from now, we're probably looking at Jalen Clark and he's getting a contract somewhere else. But then they hopefully have someone else that they draft next year behind Jalen Clark ready to assume the Jalen Clark, 11th guy minutes. I do. The point guard thing is going to be interesting. I think that's, like, they do have to add depth there. They only had Mike and Rob as their point guards last year, and Nikhil, I think, did an okay job towards the end of the season, being more of like a driver and like facilitator. Dante had like to be determined streaks. I mean, his assist numbers were high, but also like he just doesn't have a lot of like playmaking, create his own shot game. So they do need something. But for me, my hope is that it works out in a way where Rob is playing 28, 30 minutes and Mike's playing 15 to 18 off the bench. And it's just a natural switch. But I think the if there's one thing I learned last season with Rob, like he works hard, he's a really good kid. Like talking to him at practices, he's got his head on straight. But like his jump shot was pretty broken, like broken jump shot. And all throughout the season, he put a ton of time into it, getting it right. And then he came into that OKC series in the blowout, and his leg kick was like 3 feet inside the arc after he rose up. And it's like, oof, yeah, you can't. You're going to be called for 7 offensive fouls a game if you're having that type of leg kick.
Yeah, and I think with Summer League, with all these guys, I think they figure out more about these guys in like the practices and the lead up to the stuff more than like the actual games themselves necessarily. Just having guys, you can get a lot from like an individual workout or a team workout or whatever, but I do think you gain even more when you're preparing for, even if the result of the game you're preparing for doesn't necessarily matter. You can get more when you're competing for anything.
Yep.
And I do think that's where they'll get a lot from Rob or even Shannon and whoever else is playing summer this year, Big Rocco or whoever else. But I guess we can move on to Rocco a little bit. There's a lot of consternation about them moving back. I think less so with the first move back where they got 2 future seconds. To me, that made sense if they didn't want. I didn't have the name down here, but who Phoenix picked if they didn't want him.
Fleming.
There was kind of a
7-time All-Star. Fleming.
Yeah, Fleming. If they didn't want Rasheer Fleming, then obviously the move was a move back, and they said after the first day that they heard that Toronto, who had the 31st pick last year, was getting offers of first-round picks. They didn't necessarily get that, but they got 2 future seconds, which I think is key, especially if you're going to move back and take a super development project. You'd like to not waste a second-round pick. Well, they more or less didn't because they picked up 2 future ones. The D'Angelo Russell trade tree branches out further and now includes Rocco Zikarsky. So that's a fun one there. But I mean, we talk about Beringer being a project, and just I guess one thing to put on the beer. I know people are frustrated, like Rob didn't play more this last year. I didn't have a gigantic problem with it, especially due to how their rotation came together last year, and then like they needed to figure out those top 8, and ultimately, to a certain extent, it worked. They got back to the West Finals. I don't think Beringer, I don't want fans to put him in the same bucket as Rob. He's not going to play much or at all.
Yeah, if he plays, something has gone drastically wrong. Like they're either up by
or drastically
in the third quarter,
right, or drastically right in a 1-game sample where they're up by a bunch. Yeah,
like I think they would rather, if like Rudy, Julius, and Nas all got hurt, I think they would rather re-sign Greg Monroe from 5 years ago than have Beringer go out there and play.
Yeah, if I had to set the over under on actual rotation minutes or non-garbage time minutes for Beringer at a half, I'd go under. I just don't think he's in that. It's, I mean, just think how many total. Rob played like 100 non-garbage time minutes this last year or something like that. Like that, it's fine. And if they don't play Rob and Shannon this year and Clark this year, then people have a real gripe because. Assuming they're coming in with a similar roster, like they don't need to focus on their top 8 or whatever as much. So I just think with Beringer, he's not going to. He turns 19 in November. Living into America, I do think, like as much as I say the Rudy comparisons are not necessarily 1-to-1, the biggest thing is like he's a 19-year-old French kid moving to America, learning English a year ago. I do think having Rudy for that and helping him with that transition is just gigantic. Even if the two aren't, I mean, how much older is Rudy? Rudy's a decade older.
32, 33. So yeah,
Yeah,
15
so
years older.
closer to 50, almost 15 years older. Like in that sense, they're not going to be buddy, but just showing in the ropes is going to be good. But as much as we say Beringer is going to be a project, Rocco Zikarsky, doubly so. Like you said, extremely raw. Not a negative rebounder for someone who's 7'3" is like not necessarily a great sign, but it probably has a little bit more offensive capabilities. We'll see if it's like a draft and stash sort of thing, but he will not be taking up a full roster spot if he is, or when he is on the Wolves roster, he'll be on a two-way, which I think is big because, like we said, if we go with our roster assumptions, the Wolves are at 14, which is what you need to roll into the season with. We'll see if they decline a Josh Minot option, a Luka Garza team option, and obviously Julius Sinas. But I think they kind of wanted to preserve a roster spot, and that was as big of a thing as moving down. Like Fleming would have needed a full roster spot. Whoever, I don't remember who the Lakers took with the 36 pick, but like that would have needed a full roster spot. They didn't want that type of player. They wanted someone more Rocco. So I get like the frustration with like quote unquote cash considerations, but you know that if they could have gotten another second round pick to move back again, they would have. That wasn't available. So you might as well grab some cash that you can give to a staffer to go fly back out to Slovenia once more. But I didn't have a gigantic problem with it. I didn't have a problem with them not taking Fleming or whoever. I just think good for people that they're basketball sickos watching the second night of a draft for Ryan Kalkbrenner or whoever else is available in the second round. I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I mean, we'll see what Rocco Zikarsky can be. Another big old Australian guy is fun, but I didn't have a giant problem with them, the cash considerations aspect. What about you?
I mean, at the end of the day, they're a business. I'm sure that if Tim Connolly could have gotten, move back and get a second, he would have. I also think, it's a lot easier on 2K or Madden to pull off those trades of like 4th round picks where the computer gives you a third in the next year. Or a second round pick.
2K's like trade system is 2K's trade system is broken. I feel like I have like you just take the guy at the end of your roster spot, put it like say I'm going to trade him, and teams will just hand you second round picks, and then the player you get, you can just trade like you can just like infinitely farm second round picks.
Exactly.
Like, 2K is like broken.
So like Tim said after the draft that what he found out this year was a lot of agents were involved in the second round, which in his answer, he made it seem like a lot of agents were saying, hey, if you draft this guy, he's not going to come then. So I think 31st overall pick, Tim took what he could get, 2 seconds, moved back, 5 spots? Like that's a solid, getting 2 seconds in the future to move back 5 spots. Like that's a solid deal. And then I think when he was sitting at 36, they probably had their eye on Rocco or a different young developmental project. So they didn't want to move all the way back to like 59. And there might not have been the trade there for them to get an extra second. I also wonder if there was like they had other people that they wanted at 36. And when they were calling around to say like, talking to agents and saying like, hey, we have 36 coming up. We'd like to bring this guy in. I wonder if some of those players were like, nah, we don't really want to play in Minnesota because let's be honest, if you're a second round pick, Minnesota is not an ideal place to come to. Like I understand that like playing with Anthony Edwards, playing with Rudy, Mike, like all of those things I think mean stuff to veterans that are chasing rings. For a 19-year-old that wants a chance to play in an NBA game, sitting behind, like if you're a small forward or if you're like Fleming, you're sitting behind Jaden, Ant, Jalen, TJ, and Dante. The odds you are going to get a minute behind all 5 of those is slim to none. So if you're an agent representing that guy, you probably are like, yeah, we don't really want to come to Minnesota. We want a better shot. to put that into perspective, that's why Naz Reid went undrafted. Like, he turned down workouts, he turned down draft spots, ended up signing with Minnesota because he felt that was his best pathway to getting a starting or a rotation spot, and it worked out. So I understand the trade. I think time will tell if, like, if Rocco ends up being nothing and he plays on the G League for 1 year, goes back and plays overseas and never comes back, like, all right, fair, you can criticize it. It was a wasted second round pick, but also look at all of the other wasted second round picks that happen. And cash considerations, I think, the Minnesota fan base is kind of scorned with the Twins. They're scorned with Ben Taylor. You get these new owners who are wearing all white all the time in the building, and you see that their second trade as part of the official ownership is a trade for cash considerations. Like, I get it. Like, that optically doesn't look good. I just don't think there was anything else out there, and I think they still wanted to pick a guy that could be a development person. And because they wanted that development pick, they couldn't trade, like, completely out of the second round or just for future ones. So what do you do? If all you're getting is, hey, you can move back, get your guy, and here's $3 million in cash, like, I don't know, I'd take the $3 million.
Yeah, and I think you talked about the agents of it all. I think the biggest part where that comes in is, like, do the players want to be on or are they the prospect caliber to be on a full contract, like Fleming would be, or are you able to get them on a two-way?
Yep.
And I think that's Rocco is probably, they were looking at two-way contracts, and Rocco is the best player on their board that would be willing to play on a two-way, and will be playing plenty of time in Iowa. But lastly here, I think we can talk about some of the upcoming off-season stuff. Just like big picture, here's been my thoughts since the end of the season, is that I think if you run back the roster, like, it's probably the most likely option here, and we'll call it run back the roster plus point guard, minimum point guard X or whatever.
Yep.
I think that they will win a whole lot more regular season games than last year. I think the trade timing screwed up a lot. They had to figure out, I think Dante especially will take a gigantic leap compared to what they did last year. I just think so many of their issues that they had last year will not persist, and they will win a ton of regular season games. I'm not worried about this team in the regular season. It'll
be a 50 win
in Vegas kind of
minimum. Like,
I would expect that, and my kind of expectation would be 2 or 3 seed at minimum.
Yep.
I think there are if you're looking at Western Conference playoff odds, obviously Oklahoma City is way above the rest, and then it goes Houston, Minnesota, Denver, and then a fair drop off after that. I think if you're just taking those at face value, obviously Oklahoma City won 68 games, and they'll be the heavy favorite for the 1 seed. Then the next group of teams for the regular season, I just think from a pure regular season standpoint, that this Timberwolves team is greatly superior to the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, you're picking nits between the two teams there, but from a regular season standpoint, where depth is obviously key, the Wolves should be a top 3 seed with this roster as things currently stand in the Western Conference. Obviously, teams can do what they want to do, but my issue comes with the playoffs, where I don't see how this roster as currently constructed can beat Oklahoma City. And I think Julius Randle is like kind of the key there. And really just the second best player on this roster is like the big question mark heading into the next few years of Anthony Edwards' prime, is they need, I don't know, a better player necessarily than Julius Randle, but a different type of player. Someone that can attack just a better offensive player in that spot, a more efficient offensive player, where the biggest thing from the regular season to me from an Ant points perspective was they were doubling him, and the Wolves, and Ant had his shared his blame in this, but the Wolves weren't able to like get secondary action after Ant was doubled, not nearly enough. And part of that's on Rudy, part of that's on Randall, Edwards, the whole roster really. But in the playoffs, that happened too. And they just were, when a team had a solid enough, or in OKC's case, as good of a wing defender in the league, plus a rim protector, the Wolves back to back years, and even Dallas didn't even have that, but back to back years they struggled with that. And as the roster's constructed, I know like you got to just keep taking swings, is what the front office would say, or at least that's what they're putting out to the media. It's hard for me to see this roster doing that. But if there's no moves out there that can get you there, it might just have to be. I know like this last year felt like quote unquote a gap year. I still think they could make the West Finals, and like you said, you're an injury away at that point or whatever. But I do think it might not come this year, but there's got to be some big move that they're going to have to make. And it's hard to see where that is. But while saying that, they're not at the point where they need to take on added risk yet. But it's coming.
I agree. I think they are going to be a very good regular season team. And I think part of that is, like, this is a mature team. Like, Rudy Gobert doesn't take nights off. Julius doesn't really take nights off. Dante's a gamer. Mike keeps everyone prepared. Rob, TJ, Clark are going to have things to prove. Nas, Jaden, and Ant are still not even in their prime. Like, I think this is going to be a team that, even if Nikhil leaves, which I would expect, is going to be a really good regular season. Second or third seed, they are going to win a ton of games. They're going to have a great net rating. Their defense is going to be probably top 5. Their offense is probably going to be top 8, maybe. Playoffs, I share your concerns. I don't think they match up. I don't think this current team, even if Ant comes back and has like worked on distributing, or even if Jaden has come back and he's a 38% 3-point shooter all season, or like Nas is more consistent. Like, I don't think they can. I shouldn't say I don't think they could beat OKC. I do think there's things that the team didn't necessarily buy into. Like, I think if Rudy would have gotten more lobs, I think if they would have done more off-ball movement, things like that, they could have had more things. And Chris Finch, the reason I think that is because Chris Finch, one of the first questions in his exit interview, he mentioned, like, yeah, we got to lob the ball to Rudy more. Like, there's things we can do that we just don't do. So, like, I do think there's a little bit of, like, team aspect that they could get better at. Where I struggle is in this new second apron world, you're probably only getting one supermax guy, and that's going to be Anthony Edwards. And then your second best player either has to be in their first max contract or has to be at 30 million. And then you have probably 2 guys at 20. And if you want a good top 8, the rest of them are at like 5 to 10. And that's your roster. So I don't know if there's going to be the big 3 ever again, where it's 3 superstars pairing together and it works, because we saw it in Phoenix. Beal, Booker, and Durant, even when they had a little bit more juice 2 years ago when they went in the playoffs against the Wolves, it didn't work. So I don't know, like, when I'm seeing stuff on like Twitter, or I'm seeing stuff that comes out of like Windhorst or on ESPN of like the Wolves are looking into Durant or they're looking into Fox, like, is giving up Randall and a top 8 guy to get a little bit better at one position worth it? Because if they would have, let's say the Kevin Durant, the like leaked trade, which I don't think there was a lot of truth to, because our guy John Krasinski kept shooting it down. But let's say it was, they're trading TJ Shannon, Dante, and Rudy for Kevin Durant. What does that get them? They no longer have a all defensive center. They no longer have their 7th man off the bench. And TJ Shannon was probably the 9th guy off the bench. And Durant, yes, would have helped a lot with the scoring, but the defense would have fallen off a cliff and their depth would have been gone. I don't know. And I think that's what's frustrating. If they went out and they tomorrow traded for De'Aaron Fox and they traded Randall, Rob, and Dante and a couple picks and they get De'Aaron Fox, then it's like, all right, well, now you have Nas and Rudy at center. Your sixth man is now starting, and you have your sixth man off the bench is TJ, Jalen. Like that, I don't know if that's a winning recipe in this new NBA. I think the path they're taking, at least optically, is the Oklahoma City path of let's stay patient, let's make smart trades if we can, and let's make sure our cabinets are stocked with youth so that if one of these guys pops and we have a Cason Wallace making $3 million a year playing 18 minutes, we're ecstatic, and then we can use that cap resources elsewhere. But I don't know what else they can do other than just set themselves up to have a chance, because Oklahoma City is, I mean, it's not just you trade for De'Aaron Fox and now you can beat Oklahoma City. It's you need a significantly better roster and significantly better like cohesion to beat them. And maybe, who knows, maybe Ant comes back and he's the MVP candidate and Jaden is scoring 23 points a game and this whole conversation's moot. But I don't know what trade is going to fix their problems.
Yeah, I agree on, especially like the Durant trade. I mean, it fell apart once Durant didn't want to come here, obviously. But even if they had decided to, or Durant wanted to be here and they went with that trade, like it comes with risks. My point is, I think at some point they're going to have to make that type of trade. I think that's coming, and it's why retaining Julius, retaining Rudy, and getting Nas back and continuing to develop these guys is important, because they're either going to be in the trade or you're going to need them after the trade or what have you. But I think I really feel like they're one piece away from being, one fit away or something from being like a really like a title favorite or close to that. And I don't think it's, in the meantime, I don't think they're quite there. I'm not going to completely rule them out, but I do think they're a little bit short given what they have. And I don't think that's even a bad thing. They should be well set up to make the playoffs. They should be well set up to be favorites in the first round. And you see how it goes there. I said this during this last season, like just continue to get Ant reps in the playoffs. They did that this last season. They'll be set up to do that. And maybe a trade comes at the deadline. Like they can look into doing something at the deadline, but I guess we'll see. It's probably premature to have this conversation at all, to be honest, because maybe they do find some trade that they like, and we'll kind of look at it then. But I think we're both kind of in agreement that the regular season's gonna be great. They might be short for the playoffs again, but we'll see what happens. Going down, looking at the calendar here. So Nas is extension eligible starting tomorrow. So they can start to negotiate with him on an extension, and all the options are on Sunday. Josh Minott club option, Julius Randle player option, Luka Garza club option, and then Nas is on Monday, his player option. So he gets an extra day there to the Wolves want to try to negotiate out an extension. So by the end of Monday, it sounds like we'll have information on those player options and team options, and that'll kind of set the stage for free agency on the 1st. The Wolves have a little tiny taxpayer exception that they could try to use, but it's so dependent on if they want to use that. Like I said, if Julius and Nas opt in, or if all the options come in, whether that's and Leonard Miller has a partially guaranteed deal, if they all come in as of now, including Beringer, they have 8.6 million of second apron space. That's basically their budget. Tim mentioned at his exit interview, like there's a scenario where they go over it, but I think that scenario includes trading for Durant or whoever else was going to be. So if they're any sort of running it back, quote unquote, that second apron's going to be their budget. And I think they, like I said, they have 8.6 million, and I think they can retain Nas on that, and then add another player, whether that's Nikhil is unlikely, but a point guard type as well.
Yeah, I mean 8.6 is again, if Nas takes his player option and does a future extension, I mean that's probably,
which is unlikely.
It's unlikely.
We should say is
yep. But that 8 million can also go to Nas to get him up to 23 for his first year of his contract, and then you just ascend it, and I mean that might be enough to keep Nas. Julius, we don't know what. We really don't know what he's going to do other than he says he wants to be here, which I'm a firm believer in take people at their word until it changes. Like all we can do is say like he wants to be here. He could be lying and blowing smoke up all of our butts, but I don't know. He seems like he had a good time here. It is going to be interesting because they can get to, I believe it's if they Garza moves on, Minot moves on, Millard moves on, and you replace those guys with two ways, they can get up to like a 13-14 if they really wiggle stuff around. But it's going to be tight. And the second apron stuff, I do, again, all you can do is take people at what they're saying right now, but I do tend to believe that like it's not a money issue. Like the taxpayer penalties in the first apron suck almost as much as the second apron. Like they're still going to be paying like double on every dollar over the cap that they are. I think what really sucked the most for them last year was the trade deadline. They couldn't do anything. Like they had to match money. They couldn't aggregate salaries. Even if the Wolves are just like $25 under the second apron at the trade deadline, they can aggregate salaries. They can pair Julius. They can pair Dante. They can do things to make a move at the deadline with an unhappy star, which you don't know. You don't know if that'll be Butler. You don't know if that'll be Durant again. You don't know if it's Giannis. You don't know if it's Trey. Again, this season, my kind of insight on it is I just don't know. Short of getting Giannis, I don't know what they could do this offseason that puts them over the OKC hump. But
they don't have the assets for Giannis.
That's why I'm saying, like, unless something like that happens, I don't see it. Like the Trae Young trade, the De'Aaron Fox, like DeMar DeRozan, like you're giving up an asset and you're getting maybe 5% better. The summer I have pegged is like the 2027-2028 summer when Mike's off the contract. They'll be able to extend Dante. Rudy's going to be on the last year of his deal. Like that's the summer where I think they could really take a swing. Ant will be 26, Jaden will be 27. Randall, if he extends, will kind of be towards probably the last year or two of that. So you'll have appealing expirings for teams looking for cap room. That's where I think they could make that like, all right, we are going all in swing. But that's 2 years away, which what do you do for the next 2 years? I think they're making the right choices, but I'm just some dude that comes on a podcast and writes about basketball. So I don't really have any authority.
Like you mentioned, if they release Luka Garza, I got Leonard Miller, they can't quite release because he has a partial guarantee, but and then Josh Minot, if you replace those guys with minimums, you're looking at closer to 11 million in second apron space. And I guess you could, if you don't want to have a full 15-man roster and play 14-man, now you're looking closer to 12 million. So yeah, there is a little finagling that they can do there. But it's not a ton. And it's if one or both of Julius and Nas are going to be more expensive or the same, then it eats into that potentially more. So it'll be interesting. Looking forward to it. Yeah, but just to recap, tomorrow, Randall player option, and Luca Garza and Josh Minot club options, and then Naz Reid player option on Sunday. So we'll see how that goes. And then July 1st is when free agency starts. Like we said, we don't. It's not going to be free agency is not going to be crazy in the sense of player signings. There's just not a lot of room out there, but it'll be fun for just to see where players are going, to see what Brooklyn does or whatever the heck. Andrew, anything to plug before we head out?
Covering the Lynx. So if you liked what I did with the Wolves over the season, I'm doing the same thing with the Lynx. A lot of practice film. They're a fun team. They have a lot of really good personalities on it. I have articles that come out on the Wolves every Wednesday, Lynx every Saturday. And I believe we are both going to be in Summer League. I'll be down there for the long haul, but I think they said that they're starting their Summer League camp on the 7th in Minneapolis. So we'll be having more Wolves stuff to talk about pretty soon and have more, hopefully, insight.
Yeah, but it'll come quick with all that, and then Summer League ends, and it'll kind of
and then we get time off
for a while. Yeah, I mean, I've had plenty of time off this month, but I get what you're saying. Late July into August is a good 6 weeks of nothingness, which isn't so bad. And the Lynx are, in my mind, title favorites. I know Vegas still likes New York, but hopefully Fee can get back healthy. I don't think she's playing tonight, right? Likely.
They have her as questionable. She has a bulging disc, so I think they're...
I'll say this, the Vegas line indicates that she's not going to play because the Lynx are underdogs. So
the weird thing with the Lynx is just, we think that NBA schedule is ridiculous. The Lynx are playing 5 games in 8 nights at home. Then they have 1 day off, and they play 3 games in 4 nights on the West Coast. What are we doing, WNBA? This is why people get hurt. You're playing 5 games in 8 nights.
Yeah, not great. The Commissioner's Cup final isn't helping, but maybe they can repeat and at least pay it off, their extra games played. But Andrew, thank you for coming on. Leo and I will be back likely early next week to talk about if there's player option news or whatever. But Andrew, I'll see you in Summer League.
I'll see you in Summer League. Been a pleasure, man.
Yep. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Go Wolves.
Hey, you.